Okay, alrighty. Okay, first and foremost, I just want to make sure that you can see me and you can hear me just fine. Can you send me a thumb up or a reaction just to let me know that you can hear me clearly? Can you send a reaction to me if you can? People are probably wondering, like, how am I going to send a reaction in this Zoom thing? Okay, maybe okay. So, all right. So the what can you can hear me? Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. And okay. And now we have 40 people in the room at the moment. If you have problem hearing me, just type in the chat box. Okay. So, all right, then let's begin. So, first and foremost, good morning. Thank you so much for being here, both the participants from Thailand and from Malaysia. Welcome to Small Acts, Big Stories, which is a climate storytelling workshop and writing competition organized by Act and Tell. As you know that we are a digital platform for environmental activism, which is created as part of a research project at Burapha University, Thailand, and it is funded by Thailand Science Research and Innovation, or TSRI. And my name is Panpaga Haworth. I am the lead researcher, and I would like to say thank you to everyone for being here. I'm truly glad that you are here to spend the next 2 hours with us. But before we begin, on behalf of the team, I first would like to express my massive gratitude to our partners from Burapha University International College, from University Tun Hassan on Malaysia, or UTHM, from the Faculty of Liberal Arts, Mahidol University, and from Surin Rajapat University for promoting the event and sending the representative students to join us today. And of course, I would like to thank all individual students from all four institutions for being here with us today. Um, I would like to believe that apart from, a little bit of nudging and coaching from your instructors, maybe I would like to believe that you are also here for another reason, and that is because you care about the world that we live in today. You care about the environmental problem, and you are willing to explore this idea of climate storytelling and how writing can be one of the effective ways to respond to the problem of climate crisis and to make the world a better place. So, you heard about the term act and tell. You heard me talk about it being a digital platform. I would like to give you a little bit of our, let's say, mission statements and the idea of our research. Act and tell and small acts and big stories. We create this project and this event. We do this research because we have this one simple belief. We believe that climate action is not just something that can happen because we have to create a big policy or big movements or big headlines. We don't have to go onto the streets, to do something about climate change problem. But we also believe that all of us individually can do something about the problem. It's all about everyday action. It's all about small acts of care, things that we do in our daily life, or our own personal moments of awakenings, or the moments that we realize that we have to do something about the climate problem. So these little moments, these small things that we do in our life is also part of a climate action. And we believe that those moments can be something powerful when they turn into a story, because story can travel. Stories can be shared, can be read, can be talked about, and therefore stories can connect people, bring people together, and then it will lead to collective changes in the end. So that's why we are doing this. We are promoting the concept of climate storytelling to you. And that's the foundation of the research that me and my team is doing at Burapha University at Act and Tell. Okay, so before you now wonder again, so what exactly is Act and Tell? We heard about this. The name kind of like, you see in the name, we act and we tell the story. But Act and Tell is essentially a digital platform. It's a website where it's like a blog space where people can come into the website, come into this platform and share their story. And also on at Until, we also have a database of sample writings of activists that we have curated and put in the database that can be searchable for anyone who is interested. Again, you're wondering, okay, so what the hell it is, So next, what I want you to do, as you can see on my screen, can you see on the screen the QR code? Can you like send me a thumb up if you like, okay, yes, I can see the QR code just fine. Yes. Okay. So now I want you to, if you can, please scan the QR code or type in the URL that you see under the QR code for me, please. All right. Okay. So once you type in the scan the QR code or type in the URL, you will be on this page. Okay. So I feel like I've been like talking just by myself at the moment. So I really want to see a little bit of reaction or something from everyone. If you can type in the chat box for me to let me know that I am on the homepage of Act and Tell. If you are on the homepage of Act and Tell that you can see on the screen, can you type in the word yes for me on the chat box, please? Okay, well done. Thank you so much. Oh, it's so good to to like get a reaction from you because I feel a little bit lonely here, talking all by myself. Thank you so much. So this is the platform. This is Act and Tell. This is where we going to be reading your story. This is where you're going to be submitting your stories. Okay, so now that everyone's here, I'll show you what's what. Okay, so let me give you like a very brief tour of the platform. So on the home page here, you scroll down. So this is a database that I'm talking about. This is a prototype platform. We are building it as part of our research, but you can search the name of activists and you can read their stories that they have written. And this is the database here, the live writing of climate activists. But is what concerns you about this platform is here. If you can see on the top right of the screen, it's a login box. So I'm not collecting any personal data more than Google will collect your data. And we have clear terms of use and privacy policies. So please feel free to log in here using your Gmail account. So if everyone can click on login for me, please. once you click on the login here, you will be directed to this page, and you can choose to use any Gmail account that you want. It could be for Budapest University student, for example, you can use your um, university email account at go.bu.ac.th. Okay. So you choose the Gmail account that you want to um, use to submit the story here. So I am choosing my account here. For me, I have already signed in before, so it asks me to continue. Okay, and it's locking me in. Once you log in, you will see on the top right of your screen here your picture, or whatever picture you use as part of the Gmail account. All right. Okay. Okay, just to check if you have successfully logged in, can you type in the chat box for me saying all good for me, please? All good. Okay, thank you so much. All good here. Well, thank you. All good. I am all good as well. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, right. So, what can we do once we log in? If you click on your picture here, you can edit your profile picture. Um, I am now a cat, because we all love cats. And you can edit your profile, but what I want to point you I want you to see here is my story. So here, if you can click on your stories, on my stories here, if you can see on my cursor, it will take you to this page. So on this page, there will be an option for you, to create a new story. So you can create a new story by clicking here, and it will direct you to this page where you can submit your story by writing a title, a description, and this is the important bit to make sure that you are qualified to be part of this competition, and that is on the keyword. You have to choose the keywords of our event, which is small acts, big stories. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of a test run here. So I'll say trial, that's my title. My description is trial. Okay, and I choose the keyword small acts, big stories. And for the picture here, I'll choose and logo and tell. Okay. You have to choose a picture to accompany your story. Your picture will not be part of we will not assess your writing based on the picture that you share, but the setting of the blog sort of kind of makes you have to use a picture because it will be displayed as part of the thumbnail of your story. So think about what kind of illustration or picture or logo you want to put here as part of your story. And then in the content bit, you can choose the heading, the paragraph, you can change the font color and anything. And you can also insert more picture here in the content here. So I'll just type in trial here. And this is the fun bit here. If you want to be able to come back and do a little bit of adjusting, editing, or anything, you can always click on Save Draft here. Once you click on Save Draft, your story will be under the draft menu on the My Stories page here. And you can always click on edit and it will take you back to your story and you can do more editing until you are happy about what you're writing here. And when you are ready to submit your story, you just have to click on here. I give permission for my story to be published after it's approved. This is quite important for us because we need to make sure that your story doesn't contain any sensitive or harmful information. That's all. And also, we would like your permission to have the story being published here for non-commercial use. And then once you click on this, you click save and your story will be submitted to us. And then we will publish your story on the platform for everyone to be able to read your story. And so I know that the information that I have just given you is quite a lot, but after today, I will send everyone on the email the instruction of how to use Act and Tell My Stories function to submit your story. Okay, so right now, at the moment, so far, if anyone has any question, please type the question in the chat box and I will come back to it. Okay, and now I'm just gonna go back here to the PowerPoint presentation here. Okay. Oopsie. Okay. Right. Everyone can now see the poster of the event. Yes? Okay. Right. Okay. So this is just like a run through of what's happening. Today, you're going to be meeting two of our trainers, Dr. Pishaya Waiprip, who will be giving you a talk on climate storytelling, and Anton Stephen Butley from Berkeley University, Canterbury campus, who will also be talking to you about how to construct a personal narrative to tell a story about climate crisis. But the highlight of our event is going to be on next Wednesday, on February 18th, when we would have a chance to have a very exclusive talk and discussion with Mr. Daniel Sharrell. He is a renowned climate activist, and he had published a memoir called Once Coming of Age at the End of Our World. And his memoir has been featured on The New Yorker, and he used to also on TED Talk, and he has been giving a lot of talks. He's very active in the climate change movement with Fridays for Future. So this is our chance to have a sit down with him and talk to him about climate storytelling and what we can do to weaponize story as part of climate action. Um, and after the 18th, after the next Wednesday, the writing competition will officially begin. So you will have approximately 1 month from February 19 to March 18 to craft the best climate story that you can think of. The length is 1,000 to 1,500 words, and under the topic my small part in making big changes for the planet, to be published on Act and Tell website. And by submitting the story, you will be eligible to win a prize. And it's going to be among you guys only, so approximately 60 participants here who will be eligible to have the story submitted and win the prize, with the first prize being a 10,000 baht. So this is a chance for you to practice your craft, do a little bit of writing, and have a chance to win some prize money with us. And we will have the winner announcement on March 31st, where we will also come back here again together online, where we will also have more panel discussion from our educators and from more activists to talk about climate action. And we will also invite some of you to join the panel as well on March 31st. Okay, so this is a brief rundown of the whole event, which will take place over the next 2 months, which the important dates being next Wednesday and again on March 31st, with the links in between for you to write a story and submit your story to us. Okay, I think I'm taking a lot of your time already, but this is a brief idea of the topic of your writing, what we're expecting from you. It's a personal narrative. I will cover this again when we meet again next Wednesday with the talk of Mr. Daniel Chorel, but this is just to give you an idea of the criteria. Like this one is the assessing criteria here. We will be looking at your writing in four aspects and we will weight each aspect equally. And this is to give you a brief idea. Okay. And I'm gonna end my part here with a quote for Daniel from Daniel. This is Mr. Daniel, and this is his book. And as you can see on the screen, this is this comes from his book, an excerpt. And the excerpt here, if you can read on the screen, it says that the nature of the problem here, meaning the climate crisis, is not is to just continue chaotic inclusive. He's saying here that the problem is something that can be overwhelming to us, and that's why we feel hopeless and we hate to think about the climate problem. We don't know what we can do to combat it. And for some people, it goes to the point of denial, even or rejection that we are living in a world that is on fire. So, and he said that the part of the problem, part of our frustration is that we do not know how to write it down, how to express our feelings, how to deal with it by writing it down. And this is something that I also want to encourage you to do in your writing, is that use your writing as a medium for self-expression of how you feel about the climate problem. If you feel anxious, if you feel scared, if you feel hopeful, or whatever kind of feelings, whatever kind of reckoning or reflection that you have, feel free to write it down, express it. Tell us about how you feel and what you do or what you want to do to make the world a better place. Because really, as I told you in the beginning, story can be a powerful tool to make changes together. Okay, right. So that's the end of my part. I'm sorry for taking so much of your time. Next, I will part my the microphone, the virtual microphone to the our first trainer, Dr. Pichaya Waiprip. Dr. Pichaya Waiprip is a lecturer at Boripal University Language Institute with a background in English literature, and she's here to talk to you about the concept of climate storytelling. So please give a virtual warm welcome to Dr. พิชยาไหวพริบเชิญค่ะอาจารย์พิชยา
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Can you hear me all right? Okay.
Yes.
So my topic is getting to know climate storytelling. And but before we explore storytelling, let's first take a moment to understand the reality we are dealing with, like what is climate change, and more importantly, what is it doing to our world? I believe you have heard about the effects that the climate change, the climate crisis doing to us now. So it in the news, the rising temperatures, the extreme weather events, melting ice cap disruption to ecosystem. And if we read the latest report from the WMO, which is the World Meteorological Organization, we can see that the crisis gets worse. And I just want you to read the report. This is about the temperature, the El Nino and La Nina phenomenon. And throughout last year, extreme events caused massive flood and like I think we can see that in many countries, especially in Asia, that we suffer because of the extreme weather events. And this is in the report. And I just want you to, after reading this statistic, these numbers,
Dr.
I just,
Pichia, if I may interrupt, have you
yeah,
shared the PowerPoint? This, did you share your slides?
yes,
Uh,
can you see it?
okay, thank you. Sorry. Okay, hi.
Okay. Um, I'm just wondering what is the first word that comes to your mind when you see this report. So could you please like maybe scan this QR code and uh type the first word that comes to your mind when you see all these statistics about how the temperatures or the greenhouse effects. So if you look at the screen, you can see like words that's more like have negative tones like destruction, devastating, disastrous, problems, suffering, worry, scare. So it's safe to say that we feel like overwhelmed by this report, the statistic, that data that is presented. And I think the real questions is does more information about the climate issue lead to people paying more attention to climate change and actually change their behavior by reading or hearing on the news or reading in the reports about these crises. And I think climate communication follows a pattern like this, like more report, more numbers, more alarming statistics that cause anxieties and data is presented, charts, graphs are shown, facts are listed, and I think we can call that information dumping, and it might not be an effective strategy to find a solution for the climate crisis. The problem is that the I think the data isn't wrong. It's not the data that is the problem. Is the problem is that data alone doesn't necessarily move people. Like Ajahn Panpaga have said that maybe there are other ways to communicate this issue that's more powerful, like storytelling. That's why this will be our topic. I think just purely present data and statistic might be too impersonal and create distance between the presenter and the recipients, and it might be like too complex for us to understand something that pretty complicated and multi-dimensional like climate problem and climate issues. So this is where climate story can come in as a powerful tool to be an effective vehicle to express our thoughts or convey messages. Climate storytelling, according to Sustainability Directory, the definition is it represents the art of communicating climate science and sustainability challenge through compelling narratives. And according to many scholars, many academics, we are all storytelling animals. It's in our nature. Like when we were children till we and adult, I think along all our life we tell a lot of stories, and that is already in our nature. So we can make use of that. So storytelling, like in general, is the practice of human communication with information shared in a narrative format. Why does storytelling matter? Do you mind like sharing your opinions? Like why is storytelling effective? Like in your opinion, compared to like scientific reports, why is the storytelling can powerful and can be like a good communication strategy? What are their advantages? Or you can type in the chat box if you don't want to use the Mentimeter function or it's inconvenient for you. Feel free to type your message in the chat box. So, why is storytelling effective? Is it more engaging, better and deeper understanding, not boring, spread awareness, triggers emotional engagement, improve information retention, and builds trust by making data relatable, connect to readers, a fun way to tell people about awareness. Storytelling storytelling matters because it helps to understand the problem more for a non-English speaking people too, and it's easier to understand than a scientific report. Okay, we can see the general concept, and I think everyone agrees that it's engaging. This one is like and also about the emotional aspect, right? It can trigger emotional engagement, and this is the good point. It's easier to understand for a non-English speaking people. It's make it accessible and easy to understand compared to a scientific report. Also, it's more entertaining, a fun way to raise awareness. Okay. So, I think this there are more advantages about the storytelling that I think you guys can think of it, but this is like the main things that we can conclude from your answers. Like it can attract and sustain attention, make complex issue more accessible, is also empowering. It can show that solutions are possible. We don't need to talk only about the crisis, how it get worse day by day, but some storytelling can show that we can do something about it. And it helps people connect individual actions to broader changes. So from the small scale, it can have bigger impacts, like our title Small Acts Big Stories. So I believe we have uh, maybe seen climate storytellings in various medias. Storytelling is an umbrella term for any type, form, and practice of narrative communication. So climate storytelling can appear in many forms. Let's see some examples. These medias capture a range of voices and experience, like for example, the famous documentaries and Inconvenient Truth and its sequel and Inconvenient Truth to Power. This one is from um, Al Gore's, the politician who turned to be a climate activist. And this is quite um, long time ago, I think. Is released in 2006. So its significance is that it's brought climate change into kind of mainstream public discussion and raise awareness. So the documentary present scientific data and explain global warming and its consequence in the format of documentary, and it's pretty successful, so it has a sequel. So for the Hollywood aspect, they also have this climate narratives in its movies, like the blockbuster one. I think I choose the two movies that are pretty famous. The Day After Tomorrow is classic, and I think most of us have have heard, maybe haven't watched, but might have seen the poster. I think this one is kind of like science fiction sci-fi disaster film that depicts a sudden climate catastrophe triggered by global warming that leads to a new ice age. I can't remember exactly the story because it's a long time ago, but I think that that is the synopsis of the movie. But it really depicts how the climate crisis can be like the end of the world, or is quite a good movie. And don't look up. This one is more recent. I think it's still in Netflix now. So if you are interested, this one tell a story in a satirical way, in a dark comedy way, and it have like a lot of famous actors and actresses as you can see on the poster. Um, the story is about two scientists, Leonardo and Jello, who discover a comet heading toward Earth, and they try to warn the leaders and the media, but everyone seemed to trivialize the threat. And uh, this story is like they use the comet functions as an allegory for climate change, that everyone like know that this is a crisis, that this is a problem, but just ignore it. So I think this one is present the climate issue in a very uh in a tone that satirical tone. Okay, so this are the examples of climate storytelling in the forms of movies. And for like animated shows and comics, this narrative has already pervaded the medias like Captain Planet and the Planeteer. This one is classic animated show, and it introduced environmental awareness to like younger audience through kind of like moral storytelling. And on the right is the DC Comics. The Renegades is more recent, but the storyline also incorporate environmental themes, and because it's these are presented in the form of animated show and comics. So there are heroes, there are villains, there are moral story. So that is this storyline is an interesting way to attract kids or younger audience, the youth, to pay attention to the themes of environmental problem. About uh, literature, there is a subgenre called climate fiction or sci-fi, which has been rising to popularity lately. I think it's due to the global context that people pay attention more to the climate problem, and these are some examples of renowned books in this subgenre. The writers can address this topic in a different way. They may depict it in a dystopian setting, or maybe critique it in a more realistic way. But despite the various way or various style to address the issue, all of them has climate crisis as central theme. I choose two stories from BBC as an example of climate storytelling in the context of journalism. And the reason that why I choose these two stories is because I think is good examples of how medias of how journalists present the climate activism in a more personalized way. They tell the story of the individuals that they connect to the act of that they connect to climate activism through their maybe small actions, but it really has impacts, and the news report it to tell their these individuals' life story. Like for example, the first story, sustainable farming, it's told story about mom and daughter farmers who in Derbyshire, and they are participating in a government pilot programs that encourages more sustainable farming practices, such as improve soil health and planting trees to absorb carbon emissions. Through their small changes in how they manage their land, they want to reduce their environmental impact while maintaining their livelihood. While the second story is about a group of young conservationists in Manchester who are involved in like kind of like community-based environmental initiatives. Their activities include tree planting or restore local habitats to address climate change within their surrounding, within their area and community. So I think both stories from BBC highlight how everyday individuals are taking practical actions in response to climate and environmental challenges. This example shows how storytelling can bring climate issue closer to our everyday life. But journalism is the type of media that tells someone else's story through the journalist or reporter's voice. So how about when individuals told their own story? So that when I want to focus on personal narrative as one form of powerful climate storytelling, powerful way for climate storytelling. I chose an example from Emily Johnston called Loving a Vanishing World. I will give a link to the full article in the chat box. So it's pretty long, so maybe you can read it later, but I chose some excerpt that I think are very interesting. I will share it in the chat box. Okay. These are some passages from the article. Uh, Loving a Vanishing World is interesting that she starts her narrative with the statement, I want to talk about power, how much we have, and how we can use it meaningfully. But I'm going to start with despair. So she set the tone that she will talk about the emotion first, and it's kind of like hopeless emotion, and how she um, noticed that she didn't begin with giving us statistic or some information, but she talked about her emotion, and she start with telling about her memory, about her experience as a beach in British Columbia's British Columbia Gulf Islands. So she described her experience there, and her description is very vivid. As you can see that she writes about the smell of the sea, the spark and flutter of the sun on the water, the air, the breathing at the ocean. So you can sense the beauty of this beach, this setting is very sensory. But then she moves to something else to express her despair that this building is going to die, is going to vanish. The blue font is the part where she described how this building is going to vanish. She described the environmental problem that plastic garbage patches the size of Texas, microplastic in almost every tested sea salt. She talks about fish populations are collapsing. She also present some numbers like phytoplankton levels are down 40% since 1950. It's scientific fact, but the way she presented it is full of emotions. Like she talks about this crisis. So in terms of structure, she moves from the beauty that she personally perceive, personally experience to kind of like planetary emergency, but not in a boring and purely statistical way. And she asks the question at the end of this paragraph of this passage. She throw us some kind of thought-provoking question. So I want you to ask the same question I ask myself every time I entranced by the beauty of this world. What does it mean to love this place? What does it mean uh, in a world whose vanishing is accelerating? Can I come back to the previous one? I just want to point out that although she presented the data, the scientific fact, like about how these phytoplanktons level are down, she also used kind of like the comparison that makes the data, the fact, no longer abstract. One phytoplankton is so prolific, it generates your every fifth breath, and you can connect that data with your or living. And then I am going to skip some passages because, as I say, it's pretty long. So I chose this particular paragraph. Our emotions matter to us, of course, even if not to those who are suffering. Feeling constant despair of becoming automatons will not help us to do things with love and pride, which is what we allow us to do all we can. but we can experience our emotions and still do the work we need to do. Feelings are not destiny. So we can see that we move from the sense of despair, of hopelessness, to something more hopeful, that is not like a final destination. We should embrace our emotions, but at the same time, we are not like drowned in the grief and hopelessness. The next the next paragraph is can illustrate the way that she combines her personal life to the broader themes, because she mentioned the moment that her mother's was dying, which is something very personal, right? Is the moment of vulnerability. She said that when my mother was dying, my grief was profound, and what she was doing at that time, she needs her an alpaca blanket, and she spent the time with her. She connects it into the bigger message that although we can feel fear of losing someone we love, and grief and also anger, all these negative emotions when that we are experiencing when we are losing someone beloved to us. She compared this moment to the vanishing uh, vanishing beauty of the environmental world. And we can see that this personal experience can help her to express her feelings. She moved from the feeling of fear and grief and despair to the themes about responsibilities and also action, because she ends this paragraph with the sentence that for one thing, it doesn't matter so much that we are often uncertain what they are. In any moment, we can choose to show up. This is encouraging us to act, to do something despite our emotions. Okay. Uh, I think I skipped some paragraph. Yeah, this one it shows the sense of activism, climate activism that doesn't need a grand gesture or big actions, because Emily writes that everybody have has different skill and different temperaments, and we can take some parts in the activism. Like she said that she is an introvert, and but she can do something. She can learn how to lean on other people, letting them lean on me, some kind of building sense of community in this climate activism. And everybody has their own unique ability to contribute to something. We have one volunteer, she gives an example. She have one volunteer who spend a day every week doing our books, another who does all the things about database, or someone write thank you notes for us. So this kind of small things together, we they can contribute to some bigger movement, bigger changes. So from these excerpts, I think you can see that the tone throughout it is very personal, intimate, and explores vulnerability. She admits despair, sadness, and the overwhelming feelings, but she refuses to stop or she refuses the paralysis. Um, I think her lies, feelings are not destiny is very impactful. That although we can have emotions, we can embrace it and transform it into actions. So, and I think the outstanding features characteristic is that it is the tone she humanized the climate discourse. It's not purely scientific anymore, but she linked it to lived experiences. So, from my observation, many climate narratives produces eco anxiety, like the negative feelings, but I think story have the power to not only just describe crisis, but they can show that change is possible and a way to transform it into more like practical and concrete actions can help reduce those feeling of hopelessness. I also choose another story as an example of a powerful personal narrative. And this one highlight the sense of connections of uh, the stories can be very empowering. This one's called Forward Storytelling to Realize Our Better Nature by Arvind Singhal, which I took some excerpt from his forward of the book. Uh, okay. So he starts his narrative by framing it as a memory when he was a child during when he was a seventh grader in his boarding school in India. He heard a story about a group of women from Mandal village who put their bodies on the line by protecting the trees, the forests. You can see this image. These brave women hack the tree or like put their body to protect the tree from the lumberjacks who work at a commercial contractor and want to cut down the trees. These women hack them, hack the trees tightly, and they tell their message to the lumberjacks that you will need to cut us down before you cut the tree. So those guys backed out. These are very impactful story, and this caused kind of like action of imitation because the writer uh, told us that impressed by this story, he as a child with his friends ran from one tree to another to hug them, and some pretend to be lumberjacks and kind of like play. And I think this story of this brave women kind of leave the impression to these children. So you can see that it's kind of a layer story. This personal narrative talks about another story, which somehow like leave some tangible impacts on their life. The story of the brave mother women, along with that, these photographs became viral and spread everywhere, like in the neighboring communities in town, even in international media. So this become what is called the Shifgo movement, and it gives the new language and also new meme of tree hugger, tree hugging. And then the writer continues with his personal life that when he grows up, he enters into the doctoral program in communication in the university. And this Chico story is still in his heart. He shared it in the class with his classmate, with his professor about this fusion of innovation class. The discussion was deeply inspiring and caused a lot of movements. Is the way that the brave women hug the trees to protect them can be interpreted as in capture Mahatma Gandhi's notion of peaceful non-violence fight. He also told a story that he met a British novelist, and it's interesting that he quotes what this novelist said: fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they can tell us that dragons can be beaten. So you can see the language of storytelling of the fairy tale dragons, some fantasy creatures. That story can be woven to the more serious issue like this environmental problem, this climate activism, that we can compare the evil of the climate destruction with some villainous creature like dragon, and in a hopeful way that it can eventually be beaten like in fairy tales. So he said that he begins to make the connection between the narrative about these uh, fictional monsters and the real monster in our society.
อาจารย์พิชยา sorry. I
เกิน
have
เว
a
ลาหรือเปล่าครับ
question then, and I think that is a good point where you are now mentioning fictional characters and monsters, and it could lead to the next part as well. Um, that so basically you're saying that in order to tell the story of climate problems, we don't need to write something factual or scientific, but we can do something a little bit more creative.
Yes, yes, that's what I
Okay,
say. But I try to like give some diverse example. As you can see,
right.
we can write it in more realistic way. It doesn't need to have kind of like surreal or fantasy elements, but we also can use some more metaphorical or
Mm,
something that's
mm,
you can take literally elements to
mhm.
create your own story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we kind of run out of a little bit of time, so I think I can leave this here because I think Ajahn Stephen
Yes, yes.
is coming.
Sorry.
There I think I think John Stephen, if you can turn on your camera and say hi to people briefly, I think John Stephen is going to be talking. Hi, John
Yeah,
Stephen.
hi, John
Uh,
Stephen. So yeah,
I
I
think we're
believe,
going to be discussing a little bit more about how to craft a personal
yeah.
narrative without making it factual or making it too boring, like we can introduce how are we going to introduce dragons into our personal story, for example. Anyhow, thank you so much, Nahajan Pishaya, because I've been reading the excerpts you are sharing and I have saved the links that you have shared. And I think I'm going to be asking for your reading list as well. Speaking of reading list, people, if you look at the chat box here, I have left a question because I've been listening to it on Pishaya and I was thinking to myself, oh, wait a minute. Do we have any other books, any other movies, animations, comics, series, songs, anything that you think are about climate problems? It might not be too obviously so. So please, can you share what you think is a good climate movie or stories, because at the top of my mind, I could think of um, a film, an animation called Flow. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do a little bit of suggestion on the chat box and also to get up from your seat, stretch your legs, walk about, take a 5 minutes break, and then we will reconvene here, say at 25 past 11, and John Stephen will take us to the next bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so let's take five, and I'm looking forward to hear, to reading the reading, watching, listening suggestions from you. Seriously, I need something to read and watch, so please share with me, okay? All right, let's take five, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hajim. Hajim Stephen.
Yep.
Hi. Oh, I've heard your microphone being on. You can take a bit of a break before we begin your session.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yes, okay.
Thank you. I'll see you in 5 minutes.
All right, people, let's resume the second part of our workshop today after we've been listening to Ajahn Pichaya talking a little bit about climate storytelling. Now at least it's me, I probably have a question as well. So what if it's our turn to write a story, to create story for people to read what we can do about this? For this session, for the second part of the session, we have Ajahn Stephen Butley from Burapha University Canterbury campus here with us. So can you please give a very, very, very warm welcome to Ajahn Stephen for me, please? So hi, Ajahn Stephen. I'm gonna send you a big heart because
Thank
yes.
you. But
Welcome, Ajahn Stephen. The floor is yours,
thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and a very special thank you to both Ajahn Pichaya, who just spoke, and also to Ajahn Hanpatkar for hosting us today. My name is Stephen, and I work at Burapha University in Canterbury campus. So a big sawatdee to our Thai participants, and salamat datang to all of the Malay people here. It's really great to be here with you today. I would like to contrast with what Ajahn Pichaya shared with us. I think that maybe we could summarize by saying that Ajahn Pichaya talked about the art of telling a climate-based story, whereas I want to talk about the craft of telling a climate-based story. I understand that most of you are not writing in your mother tongue, and therefore that makes it more challenging. It becomes more difficult, right? So I would just like to reassure you that, yes, as Ajahn Pichaya very correctly said, writing is an art, but at the same time, it's also a craft, and therefore you can learn how to do it. So as an English teacher, I would like to share some suggestions today about how to write in an effective and entertaining manner, following on from what Ajahn Pichaya said. And I would also like to add some important literary details about things that you can think about to increase how engaging and how entertaining your work can be, particularly through your own personal expression, but also through boosting your level of creativity. If I can just follow on also from what Ajahn Pankaj said earlier, most of what I'll be talking about today is something that AI absolutely cannot achieve. And therefore, it's really important that you feel confident enough as a writer to express yourself in your own way. Because as much as AI is great, I use AI, I like AI, but it can't create like a human being because it's not a human being. So unfortunately, we have to be really strict about the fact that you are the person writing the story, not the AI. However, absolutely feel free to use an AI to check your language if you feel you need it. But if you're confident enough, don't worry about it. You probably don't need it. Okay, let's get moving then. The first thing you should know is at the end of this presentation, I will ask you to please write one sentence. That's all, one sentence. And imagine that that sentence is the first sentence of your personal narrative. If you really want to use that sentence, sure, why not? But of course, it's your work and you can go back and completely change it if you would like. because I just want to make sure that we've got some kind of goal in mind for today. Okay, of course, I've used the classic example. It was a dark and stormy night, which is in fact the beginning of a famous novel. And we often in English use that as a bit of a joke when we're talking about the beginning of a new story. Okay, when we're talking about personal narratives, there are 4 literary concepts that I think will help you to start off with your work. They should also help you to boost your level of creativity and your own individuality in your work. Those 4 things, I'm sure that you have a really good idea of the first one, which is the plot, or you could also say storyline. Second is point of view, which I'm sure particularly Thai students will understand because it's related to grammar. And the third is tone, and the final one is structure. When I say structure, I'm talking about the structure of language, not the structure of the story. That's the plot. Okay, so let's keep moving. When we're talking about plot, there is a standard plot in English. Standard is boring. Come on, let's be honest. Standard is just another word for normal, and normal is just another word for boring. However, please know that generally speaking, in English, the standard way that we build a story is on the left here. You slowly build up to some kind of climax. And then there's a resolution or some way to fix the problem. To be honest with you guys, every Hollywood movie ever follows exactly this plot, okay? So we all know it. In modern literature, including a couple of works that Ajahn Pichaya mentioned, alternative storylines or plot lines are used. For example, in some movies, it's a very effective technique to have something totally amazing and shocking happen at the beginning of the movie to really get the audience's attention, and then slowly explore the consequences of that event, and then have another kind of resolution at the end. So that's like a plot with 2 peaks, right? At the beginning and also at the end. In a lot of very modern literature, especially European literature, and by that I mean Europe, like, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, the storyline can be completely cut up and doesn't follow any timeline at all. That makes it difficult to understand, but it forces the reader to concentrate on what you're saying. If you're interested in that kind of concept, and after this, I'll type it in the chat for everybody to see. The style of literature that generally follows that particular concept of not following any time at all is called fantastic realism. And a good example would be Gunter Grass, a German writer who's popular in English. And also Emmanuel Garces, who won Nobel Prize for Literature. Particularly, a very good example is his work, 100 Years of Solitude, which it follows time, but it doesn't follow any storyline at all, no plot. And quite frankly, I think it's really interesting. It's great fun to read. It can be confusing, though. So please feel free to come up with an alternative plot or storyline. The big advantage of that is that you're going to stand out. You're going to sound a lot more interesting. And why is that important? Well, if you listen carefully to what Ajahn Pichaya was saying, that's going to help people to focus on the problem. Our aim here is for you to be able to express why it's important to you that people understand the importance of climate change. We all know that it's real, and we all know that it's important. I think that Ajahn Kantaka made that very clear at the beginning. Our point is, how can you support that cause? What can you do as an individual to help all of us understand and work together to overcome this problem and make the world a better place and safer place. And one of the ways that you can do this, as Ajahn Himaka implied, is that in your story, if you can get your reader's attention, if you can hook them, they're going to listen to you and they're going to follow up on what you have to say. This is why I love writing, because I find writing empowering. It gives me a voice, and that voice is my own. And nobody reads with the intention of just being brain dead and absorbing something. Reading and writing are both complex skills. If I'm going to read a story, I'm going to concentrate on that story. And I'm going to learn something, even if I'm not really trying. And that's great for you, right? We should all be excited about the ability to write. For me, writing is by far the best way to express yourself. It's the most, how can I say, meaningful way to get results. So I really hope that you guys feel confident enough to write from your own point of view. And that's the next literary technique that we're talking about. Okay, Thai students can all roll their eyes and feel a little bit bored now, because in literature, when we talk about point of view, we use grammar language, first person, second person, and third person. However, third person has two subtypes, okay? I have put these in a different order because I would like to suggest to you that you consider first person as probably the best writing point of view for a personal narrative. Is it the easiest? Probably yes. Is it the most effective? Maybe yes. Is it obvious? Yes, unfortunately. So I am going to talk about another two. First person in literature is, you use the word I. The story is told from the point of view of the narrator. Okay? Now, I'm going to be a little bit tricky, might be the right word here. You are the owner of your story. It's your story. It's a personal narrative. Who is to say that I has to be you? I could be a story told from the point of view of a tree. If a tree could speak, what would it say about climate change? If the world could speak, what would it say about climate change? I doesn't have to be the individual who is you, something else, and you are speaking on its behalf. So first person is probably the best way for you to tell a story, particularly a personal narrative. However, you can be super creative by pretending to be somebody else when you tell your story. You can tell your story from a first person point of view, but that person might not actually be you. An example, of course, I actually found this sentence in a short story about sea level rise in the future. And the story started with, I had never even seen a mangrove tree before, right? Basically, what the technique that the writer is using here is they're starting off with something negative. They're introducing something, oh, interesting. This person has never seen a mangrove tree. Why are they talking about it? Right? So this is just an example of first person in a story. However, I'm not going to tell you who actually told this story. It might not even have been a human being. Let's move on to third person. There are two different types of third person points of view in a story. The first one is a limited point of view. What that means is that you, as the narrator, the writer of the story, only know the thoughts and the feelings of one person, right? And that person is I or a name in the story. Most native speakers tend to use third person when they write. Can you use third person to write a personal narrative? Absolutely, yes, you can. However, if you don't feel confident with focusing on like literary techniques, or if you want to focus more on the language that you're using, it might be easier to use a first person point of view, which of course can still be very creative, as I mentioned, right? The limited third person point of view. Here's an example. Lauren was shocked to see a dead drone lying on the beach. To be honest, she hadn't known they could die. This also comes from a story that I read a long time ago. It took me a long time to find it again, actually. I actually know the person who wrote the story too. Um, and what I like about this is that even though they're not using the word he or she, like third person grammatically, this story is written entirely from the point of view of Lauren. The writer can only know and write about whatever Lauren sees or does. This is third person, limited point of view. It's probably the second most easiest way for you to write a personal narrative. Another thing I like about this beginning is that the writer describes the drone as dead, it reminds me of like we say a dead battery, right? Like my battery is dead, my phone is dead. In this story, Lauren, who is a young person, she's I think about like 12 or 13 years old, she honestly believes that drones are living things. And when she says dead drone, that's actually what she means. She thought that it was alive, but it had died. So it was kind of interesting, it's kind of, once again, that's really creative. Please feel free to ask any questions, by the way. If you would like to type a question in the chat box, or if you would like to just jump in, that's absolutely fine. Feel free to just
Yes, I
have
like to
your
jump
time.
in because I'm an organizer, but I'm a learner here with you as well. And I want to ask the question because I feel like a lot of our audience today might have the same question as me, and that is going back to the storyline because they are supposed to be writing about their own personal experience. Um, how are they going to create a plot out of something that is about it's just my story? Or how am I going to create a third person story when it's my story, for example? So, like, can you like give us a specific example? Like, if I want to write about how recycle at home, but make that an
Right.
exciting story, how can I write it?
There are so many different ways that you could write about that. In first person, you could write about it from the point of view of a piece of garbage. You could write about it from the point of view of a garbage bin.
Okay.
Um, for a third person point of view, you could look at exactly what you do, but from a detached point of view. It's like, it's kind of like you are a gecko on the wall and you're looking at yourself recycling, and the gecko is describing what it sees. That's third person point of view. So, with third person, one of the reasons, Ajahn Pampaka, that native speakers really like to use third person point of view is because it enables us to be much more descriptive. The trick to writing a good third person point of view story is to describe very clearly what you have experienced, what you would see if you were looking at yourself doing that thing. So the third person point of view gives you a lot more flexibility with being descriptive, with describing exactly what's going on. And it also means that it's quite easy for you to add things like opinions or judgments about what's going on through careful use of vocabulary, right? Look, honestly, to be honest with you, one of the most exciting things about writing is it's only limited by your imagination. And like I'm going to talk later about one of the most important things that you can do in the writing process is to let yourself be free.
Okay.
That's going to let your creativity really flow.
Okay.
Right? Thank you for your question,
Thank you,
Ajahn.
Stephen.
A third person omniscient, oh my God, that's a difficult word. A third person omniscient point of view. In literature, we have a slang word for this. You can see it here. We call it the voice of God. Now, the reason that we call it that is because with third person omniscient point of view, the narrator or the storyteller can see absolutely everything, everywhere, at all times, and can write about anything. So, say, for example, if you would like to choose a third person omniscient point of view, and to use Ajahn Pampaka's example, you could talk about your own experience of recycling in your own home, but you could also contrast that with the experience of a person living in the mountains in Peru, recycling at exactly the same time, because the writer of the story, the narrator, in a third person omniscient point of view, has no limit at all and can see everything at all times and understand everything in the whole universe. So, quite frankly, it's unlimited. If you feel that you are a very creative writer, you might want to consider using the third person omniscient point of view. As I mentioned earlier, the third person omniscient, it's so difficult to say. The voice of God point of view is the most popular for native speakers. And the reason for that is that it gives us the most freedom to be creative. We can go completely wild with our story by using this particular point of view. Now, if I can go back to what Ajahn Pitaya said as well, the third person omniscient or the voice of God point of view will allow you to more easily add your own particular perspective on why this is important or or how other people can share your experience with engaging with climate change in a practical way, because you're not limited to your own point of view. You can say anything about anyone, anytime, anywhere. So it gives you a lot more freedom. However, when there's something really good, there's always something bad afterwards, right? It's more difficult to write from the point of view of the voice of God. It's easy to get lost. You need to have a plan. You need to have a firm vision in your head of what you want to say and how you want to say that. If you don't, your story can become disjointed. The plot can be unclear. And remember, you've only got 1,000 to 1,500 words. So this is a very short story. You don't have a lot of space to blah, blah, blah. You've got to be pretty clear about exactly what you want to say and how you want to say it, right? So if you choose to use the voice of God point of view, please be a little bit careful because it's a little bit easy to get lost. You might literally lose the plot if you're writing from the point of view of the voice of God. Okay. An example is the writer knows everything about everyone. I had to adjust this sentence from a different story. had to add to this sentence. Mike was one of few people who knew what snow was, while Customer couldn't begin to comprehend what he was seeing. Right? So you can see from this that not only does the writer know what Mike is thinking, the writer also knows what Customer is thinking. He also knows what Mike knows, and the writer also knows what Customer knows. So this is the voice of God. The writer can see everything and understand everything, right? Is that okay? Do you get that? I think it's actually quite difficult to understand,
Yes, and actually, I just created a quick poll because I'm curious if you can see on the screen.
right?
Just to check as well if our uh, audience followed you. I have just asked on the screen from
Right.
listening to it and Stephen.
Third person is popular. Oh dear. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
It's changing. Cool, cool.
Y- y- No one is interested. Okay, it's like Voice of God is not as popular as I think it would be.
It is more difficult to write from
Yes,
that point of view.
because just to give you like a sneak peek behind the scene, like John Stephen and I talked a little bit about this because the prompt is personal narrative, and I was saying to John Stephen, well, it has to be first person because it's a subjective, personal story, and John Stephen was quite adamant with me that it could be any. And from listening to John Stephen today, I am a convert. I'm interested in reading the story of the journey of a plastic bag from your home to the landfill or something like that. So share with us, the kind of point of view you think you would adopt in your story. And like as Stephen said, be as creative as you want to be. Okay, and
Absolutely, yes.
yes, so
And
just a quick
Dan,
poll.
you can tell a story from the point of view of a plastic bag in first person or in third person. So it's up to your own creativity and how come and exactly what you want to say and how you feel comfortable with expressing that. So, I agree with the Dan Pampaga that creativity and as if I can just follow up, we were also talking about creativity and how Dan Pampaga thought that that was an important part of this process. And she wanted us to emphasize that, hey, this is not academic, you should be creative here. And I absolutely support her in that because we're at university, all of us are university people. We can see that kind of thing every day. Let's do something new. Let's step outside of our comfort zone and try something new. It's more fun, it's more interesting that way, don't you think?
Absolutely, and I think it connects with what Ajahn Pichaya said to us earlier. When we talk about climate change or yawn, like, oh God, and it
Yeah,
could be boring, it could be overwhelming, it could be scary as well. And
yeah.
and that's why we want to move away from that. And after today, like on Wednesday, when we listened to Daniel, he wrote a whole memoir as a letter to a child that he hasn't had yet. And just to tell that child of his that he thought he might have or not, about what he has been doing right now to save the planet for the future. So creativity is a key here. And in, you know, what we are trying to talk to you about climate storytelling. And if you want to win our prize money, be as creative as you want to be. All right.
Absolutely, Ajahn.
Okay.
And once again, following on from what Ajahn Pichaya said, is that if you've got something to get across to other people, if you've got a point, if you've got a story, or as Ajahn Pampaka was saying also, if you have a passion for making the world a better place, and I really hope that we all do, then we've got to find a way to make other people listen. and creativity and being interesting and exciting, well, that's going to help people listen, right? If you're really boring, who wants to listen to that? Not me. I can be boring every day. I work in the classroom. I can be as boring as I want to be. I want to have fun. So, and just
So
let yourself go,
don't write us an essay. We don't need introduction, three bodies, and conclusion.
that
We
is
don't need
beautifully.
none of that.
It's a story, not an essay,
Yes.
right? I couldn't agree more. I love that. Look, to be honest with you, if I can just move quickly on to second person, as probably Jen, I'm guessing probably Z, most of you. I'm guessing that most of you know. Um, oh, sorry. I'm guessing that most of you know games where you can make your own story. Um, in that situation, it's really, really difficult for you to write a personal narrative because you're pushing your audience to make their own story. It's not your story anymore. You're only offering choices. So, to be honest with you, I don't recommend using second person to write a personal narrative. It's probably easiest to stick with the first person point of view. And then if you feel a bit more confident, you want to be a bit more creative, a bit more wild, go for third. Second person is not really appropriate for a personal narrative. It's fine for a game. Okay. If you have no questions, let's quickly move on to the idea of tone. Um, for tone, I think that we all know what this word means in the context um, of literature. It means, I can just get that out of the way, please. Thank you. It means the feeling or the mood of your work. And Ajahn Panpaka was kind enough to give me a great segue into this by mentioning that our guest speaker at the end of the month chose a really, really interesting register in which to write. So he chose to write a personal diary to his son or daughter who hasn't even been born yet. Right? That's very creative, right? So what he's doing there is he's setting up a tone in his work. He's setting up an environment in his work where we feel that it's going to be emotional. It's a father talking to their child. It's the past talking to the future. It's the present talking about an unknown consequence that we're a part of. And so we can guess that this writer is setting up quite an emotional tone in his work because of the register that he has chosen. So all of these words that I'm using here are all related to tone. Basically, tone is the feeling that you want to create through your work. How do you want your audience to feel, right? Do you want them to feel afraid? Because, hey, when Ajahn Panpaka asked, what's the first thing that comes into your mind when we talk about climate change statistics? The first word that came into my mind was fear. And the second word that came into my mind is terrible. It was hopelessness. And so, maybe therefore, like, I can understand why Ajahn Pamaka asked that question. She's trying to get you thinking about exactly how do you want to communicate your feelings about what you personally have done or what you personally have experienced with regards to being a climate change activist. So for me, I would probably choose a kind of fearful or frightening tone for my story. Because when I answered Ajahn Pampaka's question, that's the first thing that came into my head. So that's probably the strongest feeling or the most obvious feeling that climate change brings to me. So it might be easier for me to write about that kind of feeling or mood in my work. Now, the big question I'm sure for every writer like us is, how do I communicate that tone to my readers? What do I do? Well, the answer to that question is pretty boring, actually. It's language skills. It's just good old four language skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. You need to choose vocabulary carefully. You need to choose grammar structures carefully. Like, think about the difference between active voice and passive voice. How does that change the feeling of what I'm talking about? Think about syntax, sentence structure. How do I feel when I read a really long sentence, right? How do I feel when I read a really short sentence? Basically, creating tone depends on how skillful you are as a writer. And I use the word skill to contrast with what Ajahn Pichaya was saying. I'm talking about writing as a craft, not storytelling as an art. Right? Ajahn Pichaya was talking more about the art of communicating your passion for climate change through narrative. I'm talking more about the relationship between you and your reader. How can you make the reader understand what I feel about this? How can I make my reader feel something that is important to me? Right? So I'm looking at this from a different point of view from what Ajahn Pichaya did. She's being an artist. I'm being a craftsperson. I'm interested in how you put words together to make meaning. But of course, that's because I'm a language teacher. It's my job. So, with regards to tone, please remember also down here, there are so many different genres, right? That's a tough word. It's French, right? Genre, G-E-N-R-E, or type of literature that you could choose to write. And I strongly encourage you to try writing outside of just a normal, everyday, old essay style, right? Why wouldn't you write a romance story based on climate change? Why not? Your recycling activities at home led you to meet the perfect partner. Oh, goodness, how romantic is that? We're all going to cry at the end of this story, I'm sure, right? What you could write a fantasy story, right? For example, you feel so proud that a dragon, to use Ajahn Pichaya's word, that a dragon chose to live in a tree that you planted when you were little, right? So, like, why not write a fantasy story about your own personal experience? Take your own story and turn it into something fantastic. Take your own story and turn it into a romance. Take your own story and turn it into science fiction or a disaster story or whatever you like. A ghost story, why not? If you love ghost stories, then try to make your own personal experience into a ghost story. You can do that. It just depends on how brave you are to step outside of your comfort zone, right? So with regards to tone, my final suggestion about tone is, just checking the time, is think about the tone that you want to convey to your reader before you start writing. The reason is because if you think about if you think about tone and mood before you start writing, that will help you to choose the vocabulary, the sentence styles that you want to craft your story from, right? Don't forget that language is the the tool that you're using to tell the story. And how people see your story is going to depend on how you use that tool, language. So my recommendation is please think carefully about tone before you start writing. The reason is because thinking about tone before you start will help you choose vocabulary, sentence structures, and also it will help you be able to think of an appropriate plot for the style of story that you want to tell. Okay, so this is a fun poll. I like this one. This is good fun. How do you want your reader to feel after reading a story? Hopeful? That's awesome. That's kind of what I'd like. A sense of urgency or fear? That's probably what I'd actually do. Or pumped up and ready to take action. Oh, well, that's tough. Wow, that's hard. I hope you can do that. That would be
It
exciting.
doesn't need to be just these three though, but I am limited to only three choices. So,
Of
but
course, of
I was
course.
just trying to suggest that, look, you can approach your story from various tones, like Ajahn Stephen said, be creative. And each of the choice ends with to take action. You can use the sense of fun, adventure, you know, to make them feel good and say, look, we can do this. Or you can make
Exactly.
them feel, oh, shoot, we're running out of time. We have to
Yeah.
do something.
What are
Or
we
we
going to
can,
do? What are we going to do?
yeah, what do we do? Or we can make them feel pumped up and let's take action.
That's
Or,
right. Let's do
and
this.
yes, so there are many, many, many ways, not just these three ways that you can adopt into your
Exactly.
story. Mhm.
And this is what you need to think about before you start writing, because that will act like a framework or like a kind of flow chart to help you develop your plot in an appropriate way, and also to think about the kind of style of words and language that you're going to use to create tone, right? So I thoroughly agree with Ajahn Panpaka that think about this before. Think about the reaction that you would like to build in your audience. And that will really help make your work easier for you, I'm sure. And that's important because writing is difficult, right? And it's difficult for me too, you
But
know?
fun.
But it is fun. Like for me, as I said before, writing is tough, but I love the way that writing empowers me. It gives me a voice, right? And that's what I love about it. All right. Finally, structure. Boring. Whenever I teach the first year students, I tell them that you're going to be so bored about grammar and structure in first and second year when you're studying English. However, grammar is your friend. In third and fourth year, when your teachers expect you to give business presentations or write academic essays or write climate change personal narratives, for example, grammar is absolutely an important tool for you to use. As I said before, the writing structure, that is, how do you open your story? The plot, how do you build to a climax, right? How is that resolved, right? How does your grammar, how do your sentences reflect that? An example is often, if you want to create impact with your story, you'll write very, very short sentences. In fact, you might decide to break the rules of grammar and write phrases, not full sentences. Why not? Ajahn Panpaka showed you that we're not giving you any marks for grammar. We're not interested in that. We're interested in your ability to communicate and inspire people to act against climate change. So we don't care about your grammar. We don't, as long as you use the grammar and vocabulary to express yourself and achieve your goals, we're totally happy, right? So please think about that. Think that don't see Don't see grammar and vocabulary as an enemy or as something too difficult for you. Absolutely not. It's your friend. It's the tools that you use to create a good story. Short, sharp sentences create impact. Long, flowing sentences generally force people to think. It makes people have to concentrate on what you're trying to say, right? Especially if it's a complex compound sentence, those they force you to 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 be active mentally while you're reading it. It forces you to concentrate, right? The whole reason that literature exists as a field of study is because of this. People who study literature are interested in how we use the tool of language to create meaning and feeling in people. This is what literature is all about. And you're a part of that now. That's exciting stuff. You should feel really excited about this. I do, because I love writing. It's such a good thing. All right. Do you have any questions about that? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, please feel free to turn on your microphone or type a
Yeah,
question in the chat box. If you I think we asking them to move themselves from their comfort zone. I think when they signed up, they didn't expect that we want to turn all of them into a little creative writer. But that's what we're doing here, that we are turning each and single one of you in this room into an author to write a creative piece of short story, about your personal experience dealing with the climate problem. Any question, if you can't think of one now, you can type one later. So you
absolutely. Of
can,
course.
yes.
And Ajahn Pampaka, as we're all three of us are teachers. And so I think that we can agree that without being challenged, what you learn is probably not very useful. The best way to get people to learn is to challenge them to do something new. And so that's why we're here. We're just hoping that you guys can not only enjoy yourselves, but express yourselves, give you and make the world a better place in your own way. This is why, for me, writing is so empowering.
Okay, I have a question from one of the audience. What are the most disturbing aspects for the panel when reading the writing in terms of formatting and storyline? Disturbing aspects. I'm not quite if Kun Siti can like elaborate a little bit more on that. But yeah, someone raise the hand if you
I think I get your point.
okay, so yeah.
If you're trying to create a a discomforting or a disturbing feeling in your audience, that's a tough thing to do. The easiest way probably to do that is to not be direct in what you write. Instead of saying the water level was rising noticeably, you might say the grass near the edge of the swamp seemed to be disappearing. And then suddenly I noticed that even the shrubs beside my campsite were now in the water. Is it high tide? Why is it so quick? Instead of saying the water's rising, describe what happens when the water rises and let the reader work it out for themselves what's going on. It makes the reader work harder, but it also leaves the reader with a feeling of what's going on here? The writer's not telling me what I want to know. What's happening? And it leaves people feeling a bit out of place. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree with Ajahn Stephen. I think to adopt the strategy of what is called show and tell
yeah,
Mm,
can
yeah,
can elicit this emotion. You don't need to just explicitly tell,
the
but just
reader.
show just
Yeah.
the scene or the description and let that work naturally. Yeah.
Exactly. It's even worse if you only describe the feelings that happen as a result of an event in your real world, in your narrative, and don't actually tell people what's happening in that real world. Right? That's even worse. That's kind of like, oh my God, what's going on here? It's kind of fun, but once again, that's a difficult technique to use. Um, and it's really difficult to use that technique if you use a first person point of view. Although you can use an emotional description in a first person point of view to build a feeling of discomfort or uncertainty in your audience. That's a good question. That's a tough question, actually. That's a difficult question. You made me want to go home and practice writing to make my audience feel disturbed. I want to do that now.
So, Stephen, do you want to submit your writing for the
I
competition as
don't
well?
think that would be fair. I
But
don't
that,
think that would
but
be
that's
fair.
a good question from City as well, because I haven't yet told them yet that Ajahn Pichaya and John Stephen will be our two judges. And so these are the two people. We don't just invite them here to talk your ears out, but we have them here because I want you to hear from them and they will be reading your stories. And these are the two people that you have to please. And so far, you have heard from them how they love, to read some super creative stories. So go to town, let your creative
Absolutely.
juice work for you. Okay? All right.
Absolutely. That's great.
Mm.
Just a couple of really short suggestions about structure. And this applies to everybody, including native speakers. First of all, English gets bored very easily. Please vary your sentence type and structure. Remember that different sentence types are going to have different impacts on your audience. So you might want to experiment with that by reading your story to other people or asking other people to read your story and then ask them how they felt after reading it. Second of all, always keep your audience in mind. I mean, in this situation, you could say that Ajahn Pitchaya and I are your audience. I think that in fact, the audience is the world. You want to communicate your passion and your experience with dealing with climate change to everybody. So you need to choose a level of language that you think most people are going to understand, right? Please remember there is nothing wrong with using simple, easy language to communicate. This is not an academic essay. You don't need to write fabulous words and complicated sentences. It's not, if you want to, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's nothing wrong with using really simple sentences as well. Okay. So please feel free to experiment, but generally speaking, English wants you to use a wide variety of sentence structures. Second, English wants you to think about who you're writing to. And third, same for vocabulary, okay? If you use a repeated word too often, it gets boring. Keywords are important in your writing. However, if you overuse a keyword, it has the opposite effect. We get sick of it, we get bored with it, right? If you're not confident about vocabulary, please use a thesaurus. A thesaurus, this word here, is much, much more useful to a writer than a dictionary. There are a lot of thesauruses available online. And this is my favorite, my own personal favorite one. Um, and for anybody who wants to do more writing in Thai, there is one Thai thesaurus available. It's called Klang Kam. And it's a wonderful book, strongly recommended for Thai writers. General suggestions, okay? This is everything, okay? If you want to be a good writer, read. When you read, you are looking at an example of somebody else's writing. So when you read, you're looking at how to write. You're looking at a writing product. So if you want to be a good writer, I absolutely admire Ajahn Pichaya for giving you so many ideas about what you can watch and read and listen to give yourself some examples. And I was laughing with Ajahn Pichaya because I wanted to do that too, but then she told me that she was going to do it. And I laughed because I actually chose the day after tomorrow. I chose at least 3 words exactly the same as her. And so
Maybe because they are classics ones.
yeah. So I'm kind of feeling, oh wow, I must be right because I thought of it. So I'm feeling good. Second of all, writing is an art and a skill. Like every skill in the world, if you want to be good at the skill, you must practice. Practice your writing, Facebook posts, diaries, scrapbooks, anything. The more you practice your storytelling, the more confident you'll be and the better you'll become.